segment is brought to you by The Ugly Grouper.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Speed Radio, here on this Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you. Joining me now is the National Recruiting Director for Rivals and Yahoo, Adam Gorney. Adam, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Jim. How are you, man?
Great. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us. I know you're very busy. I was talking about on yesterday's show that we are dead center of fall camp and the kickoff. And my kickoff, I don't count week 0 just because there's no calories there, but to week 1 kickoff, and it's rolling quickly, and it's going to be here. There's not a ton of big games up front, which is I'm fine with that. I'd rather teams get their stuff going, and I wouldn't, if I was a team that's a quality team, the last thing I would want is a tough matchup right off the bat, just for that reason, and because of what a loss in college football does. It's unlike almost any other sport.
Yeah, it is definitely different now, though. So I would agree with you. If I was an athletic director, if I was a coach, my non-conference schedule, especially in the SEC, especially in the Big Ten, would be as easy as it could possibly be. And then I just wouldn't test my team until absolutely necessary later in the season. I do think, though, with 12 teams now, it does change. A loss does not completely put your season out of reach of the playoff. I think the committee will take those bigger games into account, and so you could be a little bit more risky. Now, to be risky in week 1, I'm not sure that's the way to go. But, as a college football fan, I certainly encourage those games because it's certainly better than watching Western Carolina at NC State.
Pretty much everything we're going to see on week 0.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys. And I get it. It's like, man, just start the good stuff. And speaking of schedules, Indiana Kurt Cignetti could not have handpicked a schedule better than for his first season in Indiana. The Hoosiers have 8 home games, which is an anomaly. Part of that is because they bought out of the game with Louisville, which they caught a lot of flack over. But looking at this now, a very wise decision. It was money well spent. But they've got 8 home games, and the 4 games they have on the road are at UCLA, which I think Indiana upsets UCLA, wins that game. They have to go to Northwestern and play on the soccer field. Then they have to go to Michigan State, which could be certainly a test, and Ohio State, and that's a different story there. But everything else is like, this is nuts. The opportunity that lays before Kurt Cignetti.
Yeah, it's certainly a good start for him. FIU should be a win. Western Illinois should definitely be a win. UCLA will be a contest out there. But again, with a first-year coach and a lot of changes at UCLA, and Chip didn't exactly leave him, a full cupboard at UCLA. That team last year really didn't play all that motivated, and so that's an interesting game. Charlotte comes in. So, best case scenario here is Indiana is 4-0 and Maryland comes to town to end September. Now, the Big Ten schedule, and we just talked offline, the Big Ten schedule will be definitely difficult. There will be challenges, but in a conference where there are some games that are very winnable here, like, a Maryland team will come in against possibly a 4-0 Indiana team. We'll see how that goes. Northwestern, toss-up. Nebraska. Let's see if the hype is real with Nebraska before we start crowning them back into the national picture. This was not an offense that was really humming last year. Certainly different look there. But, things get difficult late October, November, but those are the building blocks you're going to have. You're not going to go from what Indiana football has been to Big Ten champions overnight. But there are certainly winnable games here. Bowl games certainly not out of the question.
And not only that, I mean, everyone is judging a lot of teams on what they did last year. And if you do that with Indiana, you're going to be way off the mark, because that was a 1-8 Big Ten that just had no offensive punch, no identity. They had their issues. We could get a psychiatrist on a couch and talk about that for hours, but that's not the case now. Curt Cignetti and crew brought in a ton of talent. They had 3 of Pro Football Focus's top 10 defensive transfers, not in a position, but 3. And I'm like, this is against the big boys. And this is Indiana doing this. They also have one of the top receiving rooms in the Big Ten, if not the best. One of the transfers that came in from JMU as well, Surratt, and they just add to that. Nothing special at quarterback, but a solid 5th-year guy. He's married, for gosh sake, so he's either crazy or he's really mature. I don't know which it is, but they have put the pieces in place. Their defensive backfield, spectacular. They've got a freshman All-American back there. So they, with the schedule, the way it's laid out, I'm just like, man, Indiana has got an opportunity to really surprise a lot of people that are looking at that 1-8 Big Ten record last year.
Yeah, and I think that's the case of the transfer portal and what it could do for a roster. I mean, almost every coach, except for some outliers, are going to talk about building from high school and up. And then some guys like Dion and Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. Even Jeff Brom at Louisville has done this a lot, even though he took his team to the ACC championship last year. They've gone heavy portal, like 40, 50 guys a year. Dion has turned over the roster twice to do it. I think Kenny Dillingham has been active again in the portal, but I think it's a nice mix of what Indiana has done here and Curt Cignetti has done. Is he's brought a lot of his own guys, so there's a lot of familiarity there, whether they're wearing a James Madison uniform or an Indiana uniform. And let's be honest, I mean, James Madison over the last few years is probably a better football team. So that's an upgrade at a lot of spots. And then they picked and choose some other guys that they could bring in quickly that can have an impact. So that's the nature of college football now, is you do not have to wait. Cignetti doesn't have to come in and recruit high school kids and hopefully in 3 years not be on the hot seat and have many of those guys develop. There are definitely very elite players that are looking for an opportunity elsewhere. Maybe they're stuck behind somebody. Maybe they're down on the depth chart. Maybe they were over recruited somewhere else, or the situation where you can basically just follow your coach now to his new school, and he can put a lot of those pieces in terms of everything. It's not just talent. It's in terms of language, in terms of understanding the offensive and defensive systems. A lot of these guys are basically running the same things that they've been running before in a different uniform. So very quickly, a team that, like you said, struggled last year has been struggling over the last few years, 9 wins in the last 3 seasons. That roster could be quickly turned and changed, and it doesn't have to happen only through this like organic high school recruiting.
Yeah, and that will probably be something that he builds up later. Indiana has not been able to recruit the state of Indiana very well as far as the top talent. Not that Indiana is a Texas or an Ohio or Pennsylvania, but with their top talent in this state, it either ends up at Notre Dame or Ohio State or Michigan or LSU. Even one of the kids is going there. But speaking and the staff, the continuity on his staff is almost staggering to me. Brian Haynes is defensive coordinator in his 10th season with him, which is mind-boggling. Different, not always as DC, but it doesn't matter. That continuity, the offensive coordinator and Tino Sunseri as well. These guys have been with him for 6 years or more. Yeah. And to get that is that's unheard of almost in this day and age.
Yeah, and the recruiting staff that he's put together, the guys that he's brought into Bloomington, all very high level guys. Look, Curt Cignetti knows how to win football games. Now the question is, and he knows how to develop team, and he knows how to run offense and defense. Now the question is he just going to be overwhelmed by the talent that the rest of the Big Ten has, because those guys are pretty good coaches too. So I think that's the question. The first step was being in the ball game, like getting a coach in with a history of winning, getting a staff in with a lot of continuity. A lot of his own guys followed him. A lot of recruiting staffers, and in today's day and age, that recruiting offense, whether you have a general manager or you have like a recruiting staffer, your director of player personnel, his staff, all of those guys play significant roles in the success of a football program. So he certainly has a level of winning. He has a staff that trust him and want to be with him. And now it's just a question of can he get players in there enough, whether through the transfer portal or through high school, to make Indiana not only competitive, but win a lot of those games, beat Maryland, Nebraska. I don't think in year one they're going to be beating Ohio State, but putting up those kinds of contests to make them, make it feel like Indiana's not an off week.
Yeah, you've got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat the teams that you could beat, and beat somebody that you shouldn't beat.
Right.
That's, you've arrived when you're in that competitive level. And don't forget, I told Greg Smith, I'm going to talk about Juju Lewis now. There's been, more chatter this week. There hadn't been much chatter involving Juju Lewis and Indiana outside of this coverage area for a while, but that buzz has been here. And I told Greg Smith, he was with us a couple of weeks ago. I said, watch out. I said, I'm telling you, Indiana is deeper than people think. And in my mind, it was the final two then. It wasn't Colorado at that point. But it's just really switched with who that second team has been. USC seems to be out of the picture now, but that could always change. Everything can always change. But the sheer fact that in Indiana, where they are right now, is in the position they are with Juju, is an absolute credit to the staff, first of all, in building that relationship. But the belief that a recruit like that has in what Curt Cignetti is doing.
Yeah, I would definitely not say USC is out of it by any means. I think the people that I talked to there seem pretty comfortable with their situation. There could be some NIL squeeze going on right now that is sort of behind the scenes of today's day and age of recruiting, which is interesting. But absolutely, Indiana is much more in the picture now, and there's a lot going on. I mean, I won't bore everyone with the stories, but Auburn looked like they were in a pretty decent position. They kind of moved on from it, and now it looks like Deuce Knight, the Notre Dame quarterback, will eventually flip to Auburn, but Notre Dame is stressing to him to not make any decisions until at least the season. Now, that could be because they want Deuce Knight to see Notre Dame's offense with a new offensive coordinator. That could be to stress Auburn and Ole Miss to potentially move on from Deuce Knight and to flip someone else, in which then they, it looks good that possibly Juju Lewis gets back into that picture. But Indiana is certainly in here. He has a relationship with Tino that goes back literally since Juju was a kid, and Tino was at Florida State. So those recruiting is really, there's a lot that goes into recruiting a kid now, including money. I like to say that all the stuff that used to be illegal is now like encouraged and promoted. Everything. But
unless you're a Canadian hockey player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. But so absolutely Indiana is involved in this. I also think Indiana is involved here, not only because of Tino and the people that I've talked to there. I don't want to say it's like cautious optimism, but it's certainly like, hey, we have a relationship. We're going to stay in this. We're going to battle until the end. But I would say that, there's also like this feeling that nationally, not only at Rivals where he's number 5 nationally, but other places, he's not getting the respect he deserves. And Indiana is sort of promoting that to him. Like, we're not getting the respect we deserve. Look at what we've done in our careers. Come here and be that guy to do that. So, USC has things that no other school can battle with in this situation. They have a coach who basically you're almost guaranteed to be a number 1 pick and Heisman Trophy contender if you play for him. The way his offense is set up, you're going to have success. You're going to have skill players that he can recruit nationally. Like all of those things fit into it. In terms of an NIL structure, there's nothing, better than promoting you in Los Angeles and everything that goes in to that. But that being said, Colorado has intrigued him because of Dion. And I think that's really the main reason. Pat Shurmur running offense there with his NFL background is definitely something to consider. But if this comes down to relationships, if this comes down to sort of like, I'm not respected and I'm going to go show you that I can make Indiana football not only relevant again, but very competitive in the Big Ten, then I think definitely Indiana is in the picture here. They are certainly still recruiting him hard and not just going through the gestures. They are going after him to get him, not to finish in second place.